Namaste, Jai Hind and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narasimhan. Ladies and gentlemen, part 2 of the docu-series of the BBC is out. There are others who are here trying to rabble-rouse in campuses, and despite the government saying that this is banned under Rule 16 of the IT Rules Act, they want to continue to push it. Now, that is an ideological battle and a political agenda, and ironically, it's happening in campuses where a lot of these students were not even born in 2002. But that aside, one does have to wonder, doesn't it? This 2002 bogey, why this obsession? Is it not a failed obsession? Since 2002, for nearly a decade, since 2004 till 2014, the central disposition was at the hands of the UPA or the opposition that was weighing for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Could they prove anything? They didn't. The matter was in courts for nearly 16 years, multiple cases. Could they prove anything? Nothing. Multiple entities were involved. Could they prove anything? Nothing. What about those so-called activists, journalists, and also public humanity who for the sake of humanity went all around the world galvanizing funds, generating momentum against this for this campaign of 2002? What did the courts have to say about such entities? Has that been reflected in the docu-series? The BBC hinges its docu-series on the report of an entity who should not have been on Indian soil. Did the Indian government give them a formal permission to come here and seek a report on what's happening on foreign soil? This is not colony of Britain. This is independent Bharat, which is run by its own constitution, governed by the constitution, run and implemented by the parliament and the elected government, and of course, moderated by the courts of this country. So has this entity BBC even respected any of these? Did all these Bharatiya citizens who are busy settling political scores or perhaps trying to go after, did they even consider what an attack it is on the sovereignty of this country? That an entity like the BBC, which is partly funded by the British government, dares to do something like this with Bharat. Why didn't they ask themselves these questions? Why are they so blinded by their ideological and political hatred for PM Narendra Modi that anything and everything goes? Does that also not reflect on us historically, ladies and gentlemen, that the enemy can always divide us and rule? The enemy will try and manufacture all sorts of misinformation, propaganda, wherever they are, and there will be somebody here to lap it up. A historian once told me, and I'll always stay with me, ladies and gentlemen, कि हमारे मंदिरों के और किलों के दरवाजे अंदर की ओर खुलते हैं हमेशा से. Historically, our doors opened inward. So somebody always opened the doors for the enemy to come in. So are those opposition parties and entities who are looking at this to try and settle political scores with the BJP and Prime Minister Narendra Modi playing that very role of opening the doors for the enemy to get in? Worth thinking? Let's try and see what the BBC did not tell you. I want to start tonight with what the BBC did not tell you. How this beacon of journalism across the world, this broadcasting entity, has ignored the clean chits given by the top court of our country. The court in its judgment has said no evidence to prove conspiracy by the Gujarat Chief Minister. No proof to indicate planning behind conspiracy. Charges against PM replete with falsehoods. Charges aimed to sensationalize and politicize. Conspiracy would extend to Godhra train fire. This is what the SIT found. No offence established against the 58 accused named in the case. Modi, action-reaction remark not sufficient to make a case. Firing by Ehsan Jafri provoked the mob and it led to the killing frenzy. Ehsan Jafri acted as a catalyst which infuriated the mob. What ex-CBI chief Raghavanji had said was harassed for clean chit to Modi in 2002 riots. They accused me of favouring the then Gujarat Chief Minister. No proof to establish that state was part of the riots. SIT stand unpalatable to adversaries in Delhi. And ladies and gentlemen, please bear with me and indulge me a bit as I read two critical passages and paragraphs of the Supreme Court judgment ladies and gentlemen. This is paragraph number 85 of the judgment, and this is not just the Zakia Jafri case. This is an overall observation on all the cases pertaining to the 2002 Gujarat incident episode. Despite the humongous task undertaken by the members of the SIT with sincerity, objectivity and dispassionately, including to the satisfaction of this court, in all these cases, the argument of the appellant was bordering on undermining the integrity and sincerity of the members of the SIT. Needless to underscore that the SIT came to be constituted by this court of experienced senior officials with proven ability of investigating complex offences. Therefore, we find such submission as not only far-fetched and an attempt to undo and undermine the industry of the SIT in having thoroughly investigated all the 9 sets of cases assigned to it by this court, but also in the nature of questioning the wisdom of this court. Hence, the assail of the appellant needs to be stated to be rejected while observing sobriety. We say no more. That's 85. Paragraph 88. While parting, we express our appreciation for the indefatigable work done by the team of SIT officials in challenging circumstances they had to face, and yet we find they have come out with flying colours unscathed. At the end of the day, it appears to us that a coalesced effort of the disgruntled officials of the state of Gujarat along with others was to create sensation by making revelations which were false to their own knowledge. They knew it was wrong, but they still peddled it. That's what the court is saying. Then, further quoting the court's judgment, the falsity of their claims has been fully exposed by the SIT after a thorough investigation. Intriguingly, the present proceedings have been pursued for the last 16 years, from submission of complaint dated 8/6/2006, running into 67 pages, and then by filing protest petition dated 15th April 2013, running into 514 pages, including with the audacity to question the integrity of every functionary involved in the process of exposing the devious stratagem adopted to borrow the submission of learned counsel for the SIT, to keep the pot boiling, obviously for ulterior design. As a matter of fact, all those involved in such abuse of process need to be in the dock and proceeded with in accordance with law. 2 parts of the docu-series. Do you find this? Do you find the voices that came out and said we investigated and it was wrong? Do you find the voices from Gulbarg society itself who came out and said that it was a money-making enterprise that was being run at that point in time? Nothing of this sort happened. There are so many eyewitnesses who came forth. How many of them did you see in that docu-series? And if that was not the case, and if they are not there in the docu-series, ladies and gentlemen, then the larger question that we are asking is, whatever the BBC says and does, they have to be dealt with. But this 2002 bogey, is it a failed obsession? Let's go across to our guest this evening. Ratan Shardaji, RSS researcher and author with us. Sumant C. Raman, political analyst, is with us. We also have Nirva Mehta, Op India editor, and Advaita Kala, author. But first, I'm going to go across to author and historian Abbas Maldahiyar. A docu-series devoid of facts, and there are individuals, entities who are standing here and peddling in our country, saying, watch it, watch it, watch it. They are not turning around and saying, how dare you? As Indian citizens, they are not turning around and saying, how dare you? Is this not reflective of what has happened in our history? That there are always those people who will stab us in the back, who can be divided so that the enemy can rule? Abbas, can you hear me? I'm going to attempt again. Abbas, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah.
So, we're very well put, Anandji, a very precise introduction to the whole of the issue. And that has been the case. And what is very surprising that somehow BBC, the mouthpiece of the Britain or UK, has got into the business of preaching India about the human rights, when we all know that what the history of the colonists have been. And as far as the criticism in India is concerned of the government, with basing the case based on the documentaries issued by them, and it becomes further hilarious because we know that the opposition, of which Congress is one of the strongest party that way, is the same party which brought the first amendment to the constitution to curtail the freedom of expression to some extent. And anyone who have had seen in the internet age, when the whole things are coming up, surfacing, the archives are just tumbling up to us, anyone can find the cases that there are more than 50 cases where the bans and the curtailing of freedom of expression happened. And in fact, there are even more to it. Now, if we just go back to the history a bit, that it was in 1975 that around 41 Congress members had themselves asked for banning BBC directly, just because of the reporting related to the 1971 war, and of course the emergency was a case. And then when we further go back into the thing, it was again one of the documentary was again banned for one of the documentary. Again, BBC was banned by Indira Gandhi government, and that was for I think around 2 weeks time or 3 weeks time, something of that sort. So it has not been a new phenomenon, and it all boils down to the geopolitics, that there was a collaboration between the Britain, US, and Pakistan was also part of it. And somehow the BBC reporting has always been against India in that period. So it was fair enough the way they were reporting about the riots which had happened. Again, there were 2 riots which they had spoken about in one of the documentary for which BBC was banned. So riots was not something very new to India. It was happening there then as well. But it is so surprising that how the frenzy is being created by the opposition, or the people who were somehow would have been on the part of the government of that day, which sits as opposition today, is completely upside down of the ideas altogether. So I completely see that it somehow is a notion to bring a dark face to how we stand as a nation. And somehow when the politicians of the opposition themselves are not standing up against BBC, which is more of a nefarious in nature, the portrayal what they have done, it's quite nefarious, because Ministry of External Affairs also used a particular word, nefarious, because I particularly am of opinion that perhaps I did have the right to watch that what BBC is showing about my country and what the case is. That's my personal opinion. But on the other side, when I read about the report or hear to the MEA, when it says that there was something nefarious, then perhaps we have to give the benefit of doubt, or perhaps more than benefit of doubt, we have to stand with the government that if something is done, it's certainly essential for the country, which must have been done.
See, you have the right to see or know what the BBC is trying to say or peddle, but you do. Does everybody like you have the intelligence and the ability to separate fact from fiction, and where all this organization has been economical with the truth? Or is it highly possible that this document could unnecessarily influence judgment and spread disinformation and misinformation rather than the correct information? So where does the line lie between freedom and responsibility? Ratan Sharda ji.
Thanks, Anand. See, first of all, the issue with left and so-called secular and illiberal people is sach wahi jo vampant ko bhai. So you will accept truth only when it suits you. You will condemn judiciary, you will condemn police, you will condemn every system that doesn't fall into your line of thinking. That's the starting point. And as you're reading the document, to me the most telling comment was to keep the kettle boiling. The keep the kettle boiling is what BBC is doing, because it is not something new they have discovered. It was there. They were waiting for the right time to strike. And just a few days before this was released, Mr. Jack Straw came onto the Wire YouTube with Karan Thapar, one of the rare interviews by Karan Thapar and rare interview by Jack Straw, who is famous for the biggest falsehood of weapons of mass destruction in Syria, which Iraq, which resulted in complete destruction of Iraq just because America wanted oil. Now, coming to BBC's own strength about its record, I will quote some of the things that were opposed by Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi, so it's not something new. Let me first add, I don't agree with the blocking of the film, because people who want to see today's world can see it is better to fight the way we are putting up facts or you are bringing up facts. But what was BBC doing? MC Chagla way back in 1967 in BBC made a statement Lok Sabha that BBC carried anti-India propaganda during the 1965 war, including saying that some preparing buildings were repaired in Connaught Place were destroyed by the Pakistani bombs. In 1970, they made two films, which when government protested, they were stopped. Another was released after that, and there was stiff resistance. Finally, Indira Gandhi asked BBC to shut shop in India. BBC did not have an office in India for 6 months. Finally, they crawled back. They apologized. They said, we will behave ourselves. Then after that, when Goa liberation took place, Dom Marais was called on BBC. He burnt his passport in full view of the world, saying, I am not an Indian citizen anymore. That was also done. 81. There was they had a program which highlighted India in a very bad way about the nuclear program. 81, Khurshid Alam of Congress talked about BBC as who was anti-India propaganda. 1984, they gave place to Dr. Jagdish Singh Arora, spreading poison against India in the name of Khalistan. And this was continuous. Even 1992, PV Narasimha Rao government even objected to their behavior about putting nuclear program of India in a bad light. And who are the people supporting this? Same, the Wire, the Caravan people. There is Alishan Jafri from Wire, Hartosh Singh Bal from Caravan, Nilanjan Mukherjee, known Modi better, Arundhati Rai, one book wonder, who never did anything positive except speaking good English. And there is Christopher Jefferlet and there is Jack Straw. So this is entirely full ball game which is going on to create an atmosphere against Mr. Modi because he is rising very fast in the world. Also against India, which is the shining example of economic stability and also a wonderful example of stability during COVID. All this is hurting these people, and even UK has fallen behind India in terms of GDP. All this is hurting these supremacist people, and that is why these local Jaychants and BBC are playing this game. And because, as you rightly pointed, there is nothing in the record, nothing on the Supreme Court. It is very surprising that people who gave us long lectures on constitutionality and how constitution is superior to everybody, today is trying to say the Supreme Court, which is the supreme authority of the constitution, has falsified, is wrong in its judgment about Mr. Modi. And remember, the major part of the investigation was done during UPA times. It was not done under NDA or BJP times. So all this put together tells me that these people are just going to hang on to every lightest thread to somehow put Modi ji down, which he cannot be, and that is the final truth.
Suman Siraman.
Yes, Anand. Anand, first of all, I want to make a couple of points. One, I think that the attempt to ban/block this film, this documentary, is not a very good idea, and whoever did it, it seems to have backfired significantly. And it was expected that, look, the issue is not about is about the documentary and what it shows on the one hand, and the government's reaction to it on the other. How many people in India would have actually got to see this documentary had this not been made such a big national issue? And why did it become a national issue? It became a national issue because of the ban and the blocking. So my point is, whoever has advised the government on banning this or blocking this, and I'm glad to see that Ratan Sharja ji agrees with me on this, that look, most people who've seen this say that at least in the first part, there's hardly anything that is particularly new. So if that is the case, then people are only going to say, so what new finding has the BBC come up with? And therefore, it is not going to, muster much of public opinion in its favor. So why are you banning it? So by banning it, you're probably saying, oh, BBC is probably putting out something which people haven't seen before. And that is the crux of the problem. When you say that people cannot see it, should not see it, and therefore it must be banned, the curiosity of people to see it increases. And you have the states like Kerala and Bengal and other places where there are leftist unions and student unions who have already said that they are going to arrange screenings and defy the ban. So there are 2 points to this. One, what the documentary contains. Now, there could have been potentially an objective assessment, and people could have made up their minds. It is very likely that many people would have just said there's nothing new that we didn't already know this documentary. Instead of doing that, by this ham-handed method of half banning, half blocking, which in today's world is neither democratic nor practical, I think whoever has advised this government on this particular strategy has done them a huge disservice. And I think that Now, I've heard that various student unions have said that they are going to arrange screenings. Now, in BJP ruled states, obviously the police can act. But what happens in opposition ruled states? Will the police act in those states to prevent students, say in Kerala, from these screenings? For instance, I was told Trivandrum University, they had organized some screenings and so on. So, and they've now announced, I believe, dates for the screening of the second part as well. So the second part, by the way, I did not know if the government has announced a ban on the second part, but until recently, I had not heard of such a ban on the second part. Now, what happens to that? So the best sensible approach would be to have not banned this, allowed the screenings to go on, and allow people to make up their minds. After all, people are not stupid to blindly believe what BBC says. And I think that you have to understand the India of today, and to go back and say that the Congress did this and therefore the Congress banned so many media outlets in its days. Of course the Congress did it.
Right.
That is why the Congress is where it is today. So do you want to follow the same footsteps?
The Congress is not there where it is today because it banned at that point in time.
Among other things.
The other point is, sir, if there is something, there are the generation in campuses, my humble submission is, was born after this incident happened, a large number of them.
Yes.
How do they know what is fact and what is fiction? Isn't
Because
it not? No. One minute. I heard you out. No, I heard you out. No, sir, they have not read. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Today you had.
How do you know that?
1 minute, sir. If you hear me, then you will know. I didn't interrupt you, so if you can have the patience, listen. Earlier on in a broadcast, on a live broadcast, talking to my colleague who was on ground, my reporter, the student protesting at Jamia Islamia says, we have read all the books and we believe this is this government's agenda. Nothing about the Supreme Court judge. No, 1 minute. That is nothing. No. This is the representation of that entire bunch which is protesting about wanting to watch the screening. Sir, I am just saying 1 minute. So, Sumansi Raman, I heard your point. My submission here is, if this is against India, if it's against the Prime Minister who's been unanimously elected twice, and if it is a false narrative which is disrespectful of the top court of our country, the judgment, and if it is devoid of facts and it does not present the whole matter objectively, then if you are exposing audiences who do not know the full fact, then they will believe what the BBC is showing to be true, because among in our country, we tend to, I don't know, rightly, wrongly, I am leaning towards the latter, that they hold it as a gold standard. 1 minute.
Anand,
Sir.
Without seeing it, how do you know all of this?
Sir, the point is that the voices which have been there, has the SIT been taken into confidence? Has the Supreme Court judgment been shown there? Has the docuseries turned around and said the people who have been taken as voices in that aspect are known Modi baiters? It is all very clearly driven as an agenda. Has the docuseries?
Swapan Das Gupta is a Modi baiter.
No.
This is the first time I'm hearing of it.
No. Has the docuseries?
Ratanji.
No. 1 minute.
Swapan Das
No.
Gupta
One voice among many others. Has it named the people? Okay, Ratan Shardaji, respond. Before I go bring in Advaita Kala and
interview claiming that they will make a good documentary. On the good faith you talk to them. I have done it many times, seen sometimes good results, sometimes in very bad results. So it is up to the trust that an interviewer gives to the media, and media that twist around that particular narrative. That is the problem. So that exactly is the problem, that Swapan Das Gupta like people are tricked into it. You can't say because he spoke that's all everything is right. Now today Congress has thrown away Anil Antony. It clearly shows that Congress has hand behind the BBC documentary. So how will you handle that? So we have a serious problem of credibility of opposition, which is trying to somehow score a point, not fighting on the real causes that they can fight with Mr. Modi and BJP, and creating false narrative. And he rightly pointed out those who have not known the truth. Correct. How will they know this true or not?
Correct.
Either they show both the sides with the films about, now today he's talking of freedom of expression. They are also talking of Gandhi Godse will be banned. If I am saying let every thought, every book, every film be released, let people decide. That doesn't happen. Congress is the biggest banner of, they have banned largest number of films and books. And today they
No,
are wanting a
let them
ban
allow
on
satanic
Gandhi
verses.
Godse, but they also want freedom about the
Let them do public screening of
this BBC documentary.
let them do public reading of and also screening of satanic verses.
So your argument is
no. My argument is 1 minute, sir. My argument is this matter is one minute. Don't try and crowd the space, Sumansi Raman. There are two panelists who have not yet spoken, so please yield. Advaita Kala, this matter is dead and buried. Why rake up something which is already settled? That itself shows there is a devious intent.
Oh, absolutely. I think this is the exact point, and I'm so glad you got to it, Anand, because I am not a person who believes in coincidences. Okay, this has come at a very strategic point. From some reports, it's been in the making for about 2 years. So it's not something that has been
I'm just going to check. We just suddenly lost Advaita Kala. The moment she's back, we go back to her. Nirva Mehta, you want to weigh in?
Anand, I think more than we really should be worried about the way this documentary is being pushed out to students at universities, and by Muslim student groups screening this documentary. This should raise red flags. Very small example I'll give is that in 2016, when Delhi police filed charge sheet against three Jaish Mohammed operatives, they had very clearly mentioned that one of the terrorists he had said that they were shown the 2002 riots videos, and they were provoked to be radicalized and join the terrorist ranks by repeatedly showing 2002 videos, 92 videos, 93 riots videos, and they were repeatedly told about the Muslim persecution. So an average Muslim, you suddenly reduce their identity to only Muslim in India, and then keep reminding him all and over, and that's how you end up radicalizing the youth. So this is a very dangerous trend here again, because again, imagine that as you said, these are the students who probably were not even born in 2002. So for them, very impressionable young students. I'm assuming also because if they are associated with the Muslim students group, most of them would probably be also Muslims, being told repeatedly how the Prime Minister or how it was an anti-Muslim program and all these things. It just adds to radicalization. Not saying obviously that things will get, people will get radicalized, but there will be polarization, there will be communalization. And that is not good for the country. This is a very dangerous precedent that is being set here.
The genesis of these riots was the burning of car sevaks returning in the train, the two coaches that were burnt. Is that mentioned in this docuseries? If that is not mentioned, the genesis itself is not mentioned, what led to it is not mentioned, what the eventual judgment is not mentioned, then can I show it to somebody who does not know what happened in 2002? Advaita Kala is back.
There are so many. Okay.
Yes,
and then
absolutely,
come back to
Anand, complete manipulation. They are not pilgrims, they are activists. If the documentary does not start with the genesis of the riots, which is Godhra, it starts with an unrelated incident of Muslim victimhood. And the Godhra train burning is just skimmed over. Okay, it is so dirty and so manipulative. I cannot even begin to explain to you the way they have storyboarded this documentary, the ominous background score to the most innocuous speeches, even speeches calling for togetherness that the Prime Minister has made, has been given a background score. I'm a film person. I know how this works. This is my bread and butter. It has been given such an ominous background score, like it is the build-up to some sort of great calamity. And it is so insidious. And my point of view is that why is it coming out now? When this has been settled by the highest court in the land of this country, when this issue has been settled, when the man in question, Prime Minister Modi, has undergone rigorous investigation for over a decade under a central government that is completely anti-Modi, the UPA, personally anti-Modi. Then on what basis has this been made? And it is not an isolated documentary. I want people to know that DW, the German broadcaster, public broadcaster, came out with a documentary again speaking about how Muslims are threatened in India, 2 weeks later, BBC releases another public broadcaster of Britain this time, releases a documentary about Modi and Muslims in this country post 2014, going back to 2002. These two documentaries come together back to back. What year are we in? We're in G20. What happened a few months ago? We overtook Great Britain. What's going to happen in a couple of years? We're going to overtake Germany. What happened at the G20 summit in Bali? Biden showed a lot of respect and appreciation for Prime Minister Modi. There's that famous photograph of that sort of chummery where he's saluting to him. What is happening on the global stage? Prime Minister Modi is one of the longest serving democratically elected leaders in the world. He has surpassed the tenures of most leaders in the world. Angela Merkel, who retired recently, was the only one who was more of a senior statesman in global politics. This is the point we are at today. We've handled COVID. We have a stable economy. We're going to be replacing China in terms of being the factory of the world very soon, because a lot of countries, especially Western countries, especially the United States, want to redirect their supply chain and find other sources. And India is a huge market for that. This is where we're at right now. And when we're at this point right now, that's when the Western powers, in particular these Eurocentric powers, are coming after us. Let's make no mistake about this.
No, 1 minute, Sumatraman. The very passionate point that you make, and there may be a lot of people who will agree with that point. But Nirva Mehta, they have tried to do this since 2002. And they've failed every time. The more they do, the stronger PM Modi becomes. So that lesson also not learned, that they want to rake it up again.
But break it up again. See, there are problematic points here are that there are so many lies that have been perpetuated over the years, like the whole lie of a pregnant woman's womb being,
Kausarbi case, that was a lie.
No. It was cut open with a sword and flung with her on tip of the sword. That was a lie. The postmortem report revealed that the fetus was intact. Extremely unfortunate death. Are extremely unfortunate events, but then you are exaggerating it and putting it and making it more brutal. The entire story, the thing about how Tista Setalwad and people like her were parroting and were tutoring the witnesses on what to say, what not to say. The same thing was repeated in Shaheen Bagh protest also. There were reports caught on camera where
she was caught on camera.
Setalwad was caught on camera teaching the protesters what to speak. 20 years have passed since then and things have not changed.
And what about the witnesses?
I'm very happy.
What about
just one point, Anand? Just one point,
yes,
Anand.
Yes, Sumantro.
Yeah. Apparently, to answer the question of Advaita as to why this documentary goes back to 2002, apparently the second part deals with the last 8 years, the incidences like the anti-CAA protest and lynchings and so on. So actually, they have apparently in the second part, they have focused on the last 8 years. So it's not just a throwback of 2002.
I can get into the second part as well.
Advaita.
No, but
go ahead, Advaita. Go ahead.
I'm just giving you the background.
But see, learn what background. When you say it itself, it's an agenda driven by the mouthpiece of a state-sponsored channel which wants to show India in poor light. And you want people to watch it. Wow, fantastic. No. Let Advaita respond.
When you say the BBC,
let Advaita
BBC
respond.
is an organization. Who in the BBC?
Forget the BBC. I don't.
Because the BBC gets partly funded by the British government and their international wing, and a lot of its functioning audited under the Ministry of External Affairs of the British government. Yes, Advaita. Yes, Advaita.
You know what? It's akin.
And this Richard Sharp right now stands under investigation for trying to allow and facilitate Boris Johnson's £8 lakh worth of loans, and then as a quid pro quo, that's the allegation being made that he got the chairmanship of BBC. And the Prime Minister selects it. Yeah. So let Advaita complete.
Selects it. So you cannot define this.
Second part.
I can get into part 2 also. In France, when that teacher was beheaded, it became global news. In India, when a tailor is beheaded, it gets a little mention, less than 30 seconds on this BBC documentary. This is how biased it is. Okay? So that's coming to the second part. I can even delve more into the second part, but it's such garbage and it's such propaganda that I don't even want to go there. And I'll tell you something, Anand. It's not about banning this film. It has been blocked. It has been blocked because it has such incendiary scenes in it that forget students who've not read Supreme Court judgments. You are going to have terrorists, you're going to have this edited, and you're going to have sleeper cells being sent this documentary and saying that the BBC has put this out. And that's what's going to happen. And we are all going to pay the consequences.
See, there is a response.
Kind of radicalism.
Because
we are not able to differentiate between propaganda, aberrations, and working towards resolution. Instead, we want to put primacy on politics. So guess what? This is going to do the rounds and it's going to radicalize people.
No, it's unfortunate that Abbas Maldahiar, and I'm coming back. One, it's a failed narrative. It does not weaken Modi, it's only strengthened him. It's given him 3 overwhelming mandates. The latest one is a record-breaking mandate with 156 seats in the Gujarat Vidhan Sabha. But overall, it's also given him 2 prime ministership. He's gone on from strength to strength. He's not been weakened with this 2002 narrative. It's a failed obsession. But the other part is, for how long are we going to allow entities who have no business meddling with India to try and meddle with us? We should actually take the BBC to court internationally, saying, how dare they send an envoy to India? Did they even have the permission to do this on foreign soil? Since 1947, Britain has no hold on India. That's also another point. Nobody's asking these questions. Nobody is saying, we'll take you to the cleaners if you dare to unnecessarily spread disinformation about us. Abbas Maldahiar.
That's very true. That's very true, Anandji, because if people start going back into the history and say a big riot had broken out in England in 2011, and say, for example, any other foreign outlet, a media outlet, does a docu on it and tries to incite to Britain, tries to peddle certain kind of narrative, then what would be the reaction, international reaction, and in fact the reaction of the UK itself? Recently, the September 2022 itself, a lot of Hindus were, a lot of riots happened against the Hindus, and a lot of things happened. It was around September or October, somewhere around that. But again, if we send out our own envoys and starts making the docu out of it, that whether the state failed to protect Hindus or whatsoever it may be, then again the ball will not be swinging in the way where they want it to swing. It will be a different narrative altogether. And like, as I said earlier, that I am very much interested to know that what exactly that docu showed. But I also said that I will stand by the government if they have taken a decision to block it, because just going back to the CAA things and all, NRC was not in place, and many people had not even read the CAA. It was just a matter of 4-page documents. And I, being a designer, can tell you that audio visuals really create a big impact on the human minds.
Correct, sir.
And imagine that if just 4 pages not being read just can cause such a massive rise.
4 pages, despite being read, they went for the laws, farm laws. Look at what damage that has been done when you allow disinformation to be spread and percolated. A handful of 1,000, in terms of, you look at the overall universe of the farmers in our country, it's a handful of traders who posed as farmers, who funded that entire protest for a whole year, and it's robbed the welfare and agriculture reforms for an entire nation. What happened there when you allowed disinformation to be spread on the garb of freedom of expression and freedom of speech? Let's show some responsibility. That's what I'm trying to say. I have run out of time. Thank you very much to all our panelists. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, ladies and gentlemen, we have the MOS Education, Shubhas Sarkar, joining us just 2 days before the biggest Pariksha Pe Charcha that will be addressed by the Prime Minister, not just at the Talkatura Stadium, but let me tell you, nearly 3.88 million people plus have registered for this event nationwide. Stay with us.
Not by getting agitated by every critical documentary or statement. I want to know from you, ma'am, as one of the signatories to the letter that you released last week, what were you so agitated about this documentary, and is that a better response as opposed to what Mr. Kaju said and I just outlined a moment ago?
I think one has to go into very carefully the reason why the documentary has been made and broadcast at this time. And one has to take on board the complete bias and malafide of the people who have made the documentary. I think that is the most important point, because they are trying to stir up something in India. They're trying to create communal disharmony in India. And I think it is the responsibility of the government to take whatever action they feel is necessary to ensure that such communal harmony doesn't get fanned unnecessarily. I mean, let's take, for example, two facts from the so-called documentary that I would like to raise. First of all, the bias and the malafide comes out because they just have not mentioned the Supreme Court judgment in their documentary. I mean, this is absolutely amazing that the Supreme Court, under the UPA government, has gone into it, has appointed a SIT, has monitored the work, and has given a very detailed judgment. And the documentary finds it unfit even to mention that this judgment has come.
Yeah.
Secondly, they talk about the British diplomats report. The British diplomats report has nothing new that did not appear in the media repeatedly at that time, and which was taken fully on board by the Supreme Court and the SIT during their work. So again, this whole business of saying that a British diplomat, has done this means that, we have to take it on board. So I think this whole question of taking on board, what is the motivation? Why has it been brought out at this time?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it? Who are the people behind it? We do know, for example, that even in the UK, a member of Parliament, of the British Parliament, a person of Indian origin, has actually written to the Director General of the BBC, raising these very same questions and saying that this documentary is going to harm relations between Hindus and Muslims in the UK as well.
Yeah.
Apart from the fact of it trying to harm India-UK relations. So there are very broad ramifications of this when you look into the reason, the maliciousness. And, we have people like the former Foreign Secretary of the UK, Jack Straw, the person who has been completely shown to, support false documents because of the WMD, Weapons of Mass Destruction report in Iraq. Now, he not only spoke repeatedly about the British diplomats' report, but then he also said when he came on a Indian platform, Godhra train burning, that's just an accident. I mean, how can a senior person like that talk about something that has been established by the Indian courts, that has been already punished? The people have been, given their sentences, and they have completed their sentences, some of them.
Let me go across to Gopal Krishna Agarwal first. So there is a view that, what is the big deal about this documentary by actually doing all of this, not banning it, but technically blocking it from being broadcast, what's happening in JNU, so on and so forth. You're actually giving it more publicity, you're giving it more oxygen than it deserves. Had you decided to ignore this, then perhaps nobody would be talking about it. And now this latest thing where the JNUSU, the Students' Union, is alleging that just before they were to broadcast this documentary, lights have been cut off.
Thing is, Zaka, we have to understand that there is a Tukde gang in the country which leaves no opportunity to undermine India's image at the global level. And at every action or any issue where they can find to undermine the current democratically elected our government and to undermine our institutions, they will take all these opportunity to whatever level they can. So the thing is, the documentary of BBC of after 2 decades in itself with an agenda driven is also an issue. But the thing is, there is a section in the country which is completely discredited by their actions on the what we call about is a Tukde gang. Whether it is JNU or the universities, whether it is Kerala government or Telangana, there is a set of people who are trying to promote this narration. And the second thing is, we have to also understand what our constitution asks the government of the day to do. It says that it is the responsibility of the government, and not only the government, every citizen of this country has the responsibility that it should maintain and authority or respect of the institutions like Supreme Court and all courts, High Court, Supreme Court, even the contempt of court law says that. That the respect of the institution has to be maintained and authority of the institution has to be maintained by everybody.
Sure. Let me ask Sanjay Jha that, the point is that no media organization, BBC or New York Times or whoever it is, no media organization surely is at a better vantage than the Supreme Court of India, and no less than the Supreme Court appointed SIT looked into this matter, and it closed these cases by saying that there was no, large-scale conspiracy or inaction or looking the other way by the leadership of the state at that time. I can quote to you the Supreme Court judgment, which basically says it dismissed claims of a larger conspiracy of the 2002 Gujarat riots, ruling in favor of the closure report filed by the Supreme Court SIT in February 2012. It also rejected allegations of criminal conspiracy at the highest level, observing that the inaction or failure of some officials of one section of the state administration cannot be the basis to infer a pre-planned conspiracy by the Gujarat government. Surely, no media organization is above the Supreme Court of India. And this is like I said, I'm quoting from the judgment of the Supreme Court, Sanjay Jha.
Zaka, very pertinent points. Since the Supreme Court is the one where the BJP seems to be taking a lot of its comfort from, they cannot be hypocritical, right? Then we also need to listen to what the Supreme Court had to say about the Gujarat government, insinuating the role of Mr. Modi when they referred to him and his government as Nero. And we all know what Nero was famous for, that the city burned while he looked the other way around. I think it's a very serious castigation of please, I did not interrupt you, Mr. Agarwal. Let me finish. It's a very serious castigation. And frankly, for those who have seen the BBC documentary, that's exactly what the BBC documentary says. Point number two, the BJP can't have the cake and eat it too. I heard Mr. Gopal Agarwal saying this is 20 years old. For God's sake, your party every day rakes up history of centuries ago. You talk about the freedom movement, you malign Nehruji, etc. That is okay. But 20 years ago, perhaps one of the worst communal riots, which many people called as a state-sponsored genocide, you can't walk away from it simply because 20 years have gone. Third point, Zaka, this is a British Foreign Office investigation. This is a formal British government investigation. This is not about BBC. Let's understand, let's make a distinction very clear. BBC is a medium. I know the right-wing trollers are going hammer and tongs after BBC, but this is the British government. So Rishi Sunak may have...
One sec. I just want to be clear on the facts. I just want to be clear on the facts. This is a set of communications, a report that was sent by the British High Commission here in India.
Back on, and we're all queuing up to Pariksha Pe Charcha, Prime Minister's conversation with students, teachers, parents alike across the country. And it's a record number of registrations, ladies and gentlemen, as Pariksha Pe Charcha is back in its physical form this year. Joining us now is the MOS Education, Dr. Shubhas Sarkar. Shubhas ji, namaste, Jai Hind. Thank you very much for joining us. And what started in 2018 with a few thousand students and teachers across the country now sees nearly 4 million people registering for Pariksha Pe Charcha. Why?
Thank you to the all audience. That is these things is the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. And the Narendra Modi, our Prime Minister, he is really a visionary leader. Always he likes to interact with different communities, and especially his liking is with the students, parents, teachers. And during his interaction with different communities, it is his conception that Pariksha Pe Charcha has been organized in 2018 on 16th February. And second edition, Pariksha Pe Charcha 2, was organized on 29th January 2019. And in the year 2020, that is the 20th January, Pariksha Pe Charcha third edition was organized. But fourth edition was as online because of pandemic. And after coming out from the COVID-19, in the year 2022, there is a 1st April 2022, it was held in Talkotra Stadium. And very nicely at that time, and participation always day by day, it is being increased in GP series. And even in the our Prime Minister, he always likes to interact with the students, teacher, parents and society. And through this program, he has accumulated students, teachers, parents and the society in the same platform. And he has made a very nice path-breaking program, and that program has now become a movement. And to have the students their examination in a good way, stress-free way, as they can appear in the examination in a stress-free manner. And that's why we have seen, which was started as only few thousands. And now in this year, it has become 38.8 lakh registration have already been done. And out of these, 16 lakh from the state boards and 15, that is the 2 times higher than the previous year, 2022, it was only 15.73 lakhs. And the questions will be astonished, and everybody will be astonished. 20 lakh questions have been received. And from that, NCERT have shortlisted on the different topic. There is a familial stress, stage management, prevention of unfair means, and how to be healthy and fit, and for the career selection also.
So very interesting questions that we are expecting. You're saying 20 lakh questions have been sent and the NCERT is shortlisting some of the questions that the PM will answer. But does the PM look forward to this interaction as much as the students, the teachers and the parents do?
Yes, Pariksha Pe Charcha has been conceptualized by our Honorable Prime Minister, wherein at different types he was interacting with the students, parents, teachers and even the society members, different sectors. And he observed the life and the fear of examination. And from that, it is his vision, Pariksha Pe Charcha, so that students should be made free from anxiety, from stress. And that's way he has decided to start Pariksha Pe Charcha, and to get their self-confidence, so that students can get their self-confidence, and they shouldn't think about that it is a festival for them, and without fear they will go to appear in the examination. And you will be happy to know that in this year 80 winners of Kala Utsav and 80 winners of Kala Utsav and also the 102 students and teachers from across the country will participate in the event. And at the same time, 2,400 students and teachers will be present in the Talkotra Stadium on 27th January.
Right, but this year it's not just going to be students from Delhi NCR. I'm given to understand a lot of students and parents from across the country are going to come, and some of them are also going to be part of the Republic Day celebrations.
Yes, always. From its starting, the Pariksha Pe Charcha in 2018, it is always pan-India event. And in this year also same, the participants from pan-India is also, they are participating from all over the country, and different events are also being organized. From the writing competitions have been done, and at the same time,
I'm also talking about those who will come to
done across the country.
Who will be coming to Talkatora Stadium.
Vidyalaya, 50,000 students have participated in the painting competition on different themes, so that they can be free. Their innovative ideas can come out. And I'm sure that students, teachers and parents will join this event very nicely. And at the same time, all over the audience, all the audiences, through your media, I would like to inform that 155 countries, from 155 countries, we have got the registration.
Wow.
So this is not only pan-India, rather it become across the globe.
So are you trying to say that the Indian diaspora across 155 countries, or perhaps even others, are wanting to take part, listen into what happens, because this is a one-of-a-kind interaction? You told me that there are going to be 20 lakh questions that have actually come, and the NCERT is going to filter and sort the questions. Can you take us or give us an insight into what kind of questions will be the focus in this edition?
Yes, it's very interesting, and you will be happy to know that already 20 lakh questions have been received.
Yeah.
And these 20 lakh questions have been received by NCERT, and NCERT have already shortlisted on the topic based. That is a family pressure, that is a stress management, prevention of unfair means, and at the same time how to stay healthy and fit, as well as students also think about the career selection.
Yeah.
So I urge all of you, all the audience, you please convey this message to others in the next 24 hours, so that everyone will see, will observe this Pariksha Pe Charcha on 27th January at 11 a.m.
Well, I have one final question, Shubhasji, and I just want to understand. You said that there are 38.8 lakh people who have already registered. Now, what are the platforms that this is going to be relayed? One, and can people still register? And lastly, is there one question that you would like the students to ask the PM and for him to answer? If I were to ask you, what is the one question you would want the answer to?
We everybody are waiting to observe on 27th January 11 a.m. the questions and the introductions and the answers which are being given, but which will be given by our Honorable Prime Minister, and it will be observed through DD News and all other major channels, TV channels, along with some live platform, streaming platform on the YouTube, as well as in the Ministry of Education's Twitter platform. And about 2,400 students and teachers will be present in the Talkota Stadium, and all over the country in many schools.
Yeah.
We know already 30.8 million 30.8 lakh
Yeah.
have been registered, but at the same time every schools and every mahalla, they have come to know that Pariksha Pe Charcha, this program, this movement, and that that will be interacted by our Honorable Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi. Let us come and see what he answers for our beloved students, teachers, and also the parents, because parents also will motivate their sons and daughters.
Yeah.
Let's come together to see on 27th January at 11 a.m. through Doordarshan and other major TV channels.
Well, Shubhasji, I'm sure, and we'll also be carrying it here on the News 18 network. An important and interesting discussion. Pariksha Pe Charcha, record turnout, like you said, 155 countries, more than 38.8 lakh students, teachers and parents have registered. Thank you very much. You still didn't tell me which is the question that you'd like him to answer, but thank you very much. Thank you. And before we wind up this edition of The Right Stand, a quick programming reminder. Starting the 26th of January 2023, that is this Thursday, we are bringing you a brand new show with Palki Sharma. Tune in at 10 p.m. Indian Standard Time, weeknights, to watch Vantage, a show that brings you the world's biggest stories with a unique Indian perspective. Well, with that, we close this edition of The Right Stand. Zaka, ready with brass tacks.
Good evening, this is Brass Tacks. I'm Zakir Jacob. The BBC documentary on the 2002 Gujarat riots, which has been blocked by the government, has now become a huge friction point in campuses across the country. From the JNU, where this documentary was not allowed to be screened yesterday, students are alleging that the power was deliberately cut. Jamia Millia today, where the gates were closed and the students told not to screen the documentary. The question is, why are these students insisting on playing this documentary when it's been blocked by the state and their respective college administrations? What is the purpose when no new fact has been brought to light regarding Gujarat 2002 riots? And to the government, what are they so afraid of? Why not allow this documentary to be screened? Because have they ended up giving more publicity to this documentary by actively seeking to block it? But first, the story.
Protests, sloganeering and detentions outside Delhi's Jamia Millia Islamia University. The trigger was a plan to see the controversial BBC documentary on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Before the film could be screened, police in riot gear reached the gates of the college. And dozens of students, including members of the Students' Federation of India, were hauled away.
इसमें एक बार फिर से कुछ कार्यकर्ताओं को हिरासत में लिया गया, एक के बाद एक यहाँ पर डिटेंशन है वो लगातार यहाँ पर जारी है दिल्ली पुलिस की तरफ से, और एक के बाद एक यहाँ पर जो कार्यकर्ता प्रदर्शन करने पहुंच रहे हैं उनको हिरासत में लेकर यहाँ से लेकर जाया जा रहा है.
Jamia authorities said they will not allow any unauthorized gatherings on campus. Only students appearing for examinations will be allowed inside. But even within that, confusion reigned.
पर आप गार्ड साहब से पूछेंगे रीजन क्या हमें एंट्री नहीं देने का, अगर ऐसा कुछ वैल्यू है तो वो ऑफिशियल नोटिस क्यों नहीं आया हमारा.
अच्छा, आप बस एंट्री लेना चाहते हैं. There is no official notice, no written order, nothing.
A similar screening organized by some students at the Jawaharlal Nehru University was disrupted on Tuesday. Electricity and internet were turned off in the Students' Union office, and students ended up watching the film on their phones. But later at night, JNU students marched towards the police station, claiming stone pelting by members of the ABVP. Some colleges in Kerala have also gone ahead with the screening of the documentary, despite the centre blocking tweets and videos on it. While the opposition has questioned the centre's move, Anil Antony, son of Congress veteran A.K. Antony, quit the party, alleging intolerant calls to retract a tweet in which he had defied Congress's stand and slammed the BBC documentary.
I would say that it is against everything Mr. Rahul Gandhi actually stands for. Where, let's say, I made this tweet and then in the next 3, 4, 5 hours, I have pressure from a lot of places saying that I should either retract my tweet or I should, let's say, give another explanation countering it. I said I'm not going to do it because end of the day, I haven't said anything which is against the policy of the party in any manner.
The fact of the matter is that the highest court of the land has exonerated the Prime Minister over the 2002 Gujarat riots. So is there a vested interest behind the dissent?
All right, so is there vested interest at play behind this seeming dissent? The question to the students, what new fact is this documentary bringing forth any more than what the Supreme Court of India looked into and exonerated the then Chief Minister of Gujarat? And to the government, by actually blocking it and seeking to actively block it, are you ending up giving it more oxygen than it deserves? Let me now go across to our guests who are joining us. Dr. Nadan Mehta is the author of the new book, The New BJP. America Narayanan is Congress leader, Ishkiran Bandari lawyer. Manjul Pawar is a councillor with the ABVP at JNU, and Dipshita Dhar is All India Joint Secretary of the SFI. Dr. Nadan Mehta, let me start with you first. The government says it has not banned this documentary. What it has done, it is blocked this as per Section 16 of the Information Technology Rules 2021, which says that the government has the powers to restrict the spread of any content that is deemed politically sensitive or which could lead to a law and order situation or create communal disturbance. Does this defense cut ice for the amount of, blocking that the government is actively trying to do on social media platforms of this documentary?
So I think in terms of the narrative of the BBC documentary, I mean there are it's clearly a very clear the narrative that's been put out is essentially a political narrative. Now that you can have a view on, but fundamentally when you clamp down and when you stop access to something, typically it actually increases the spread of them. Many people who would never have heard of the documentary before, who would have had no interest, are going to now going to watch it. It's now becoming a much bigger thing than what it already was. Now, what is the politics of this? I think. I don't think anybody wants to see violence on our campuses. I think for a film, you don't really want to see students. You don't really want to see people getting into slugfest and so on. But at the bottom of it, if you polarization is something from on the issue of 2002, there is a narrative here that look. What happened in 2002 was debated in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court gave a judgment. There was an amicus curiae. There were multiple petitions, and the Supreme Court gave a very clear judgment. Now, if you are going to not use that in the documentary, then there is a problem of narratives. Now, politically, when this plays out, it allows I'm keeping aside the question of banning and so on. It allows the government to say it. I mean, politically, Mr. Modi has always played the card of the outsider, not wanted by the elites. That has very much been part of his narrative to his core constituency from 2002 onwards, and this is going to play.
I think one of the points that you made that
however,
if the Supreme Court
banning is not a very good thing.
Yeah, if the Supreme Court has gone into the merits of this matter, there was an SIT that was constituted. In the end of it, there was this verdict that came out last year, which adjudicated upon that matter. And if that has not been mentioned in this documentary, like I said, I haven't watched this documentary. I don't know if Nalan has, but from whatever we've heard, that has not been mentioned in this documentary. That signals a malafide intent. Why would you not mention that in the documentary? That is material fact into what happened in 2002. That is a material conclusion that no less than the Supreme Court has has looked into and arrived at. But be that as it may, I want to go across to America, Narayanan. I've got a couple of questions to you, Mr. Narayanan. First things first, though. There was a young leader of your party, Mr. Anil Antony. He's the son of your veteran leader, A.K. Antony. He put out a certain view on Twitter. You can agree with him, you can disagree with him, all that is fine. But today, he was in a position to quit from the party because of the amount of hate that he was getting, as he claims, from congressmen and women to the tweet and the position that he put in the public domain. That is not what Rahul Gandhi is standing for or the Bharat Jodo is standing for. So, in a sense, it's a paradox. You have a young leader of your party putting out his thoughts on this. Instead of saying, okay, let's agree to disagree, he's been hounded to retract it, and now subsequently he's tendered in his resignation.
Well, I'm surprised that he has tendered a resignation. I don't know whether he has.
He
and
has.
After
he's
you
made
letting
public,
me
yes.
know that he's son of... Okay, second thing is, only after you letting me know he's A.K. Antony's son, I knew that he is the former Chief Minister's son. Let me tell you something. I have openly criticized Rahul Gandhi's inability to get the votes for the Congress. In spite of that, I have not been sent out of Congress, and Congress is only the Democratic Party. If I had done that in any other party, I will not be in that party today.
So why is this young man then being forced to quit, Mr. Narayanan? Surely there must be a reason.
No, wait. Let me answer that. There are a lot of people who criticize me for having criticized Rahul Gandhi. But neither the Congress High Command nor the Tamil Nadu Congress Committee, which has taken me from the position of official spokesperson,